in the car. Just get in the car.
A woman is abducted and her child is left abandoned.
He told her to get in the car or he was the shooter who grabbed her.
The crime scene yields few clues.
Unfortunately, impressions are very hard to keep in that type of soil.
And what few clues there are don't seem to help.
If there isn't any skin, we got a problem.
Police are baffled. Can the coroner at North Mission Road help solve this deadly mystery? It's a brilliant September afternoon, and Kelly O'Sullivan, a 34-year-old nurse and single mom, has a lot to do.
She had just gotten off work at 12:30, and she was running some errands.
Around 3:30, she drives to a local pet store. Kelly's final stop, school, to pick up her 5-year-old son. Only she doesn't show up.
It was completely out of Kelly O'Sullivan's character to disappear and not pick up her son from school.
Friends and family agonize over Kelly's disappearance. Photos and flyers are distributed. Search parties begin combing the area.
They looked through dumps, they looked along the roads, all with negative results.
Days go by. Kelly O'Sullivan has vanished without a trace, and everyone in this upscale community is on edge.
Thousand Oaks is one of the safest areas in the country. This was a crime of striking proportion in that community.
Hundreds of people join the search. Kelly's disappearance has shattered a fragile sense of safety. The image of a child waiting for his mother makes her disappearance even more troubling.
She was vibrant. She was full of life. When she wasn't working and devoting her time to her child, she was active in pursuing her passion for horses and running and studying.
4 days go by, and still no sign of Kelly. The longer she's missing, the more likely she's dead. But with no new leads, the investigation stalls.
The last place Kelly O'Sullivan was seen alive was at the pet store.
And from there, the trail runs cold. "500 miles north in Reno, Nevada, a young woman contacts police there with a harrowing story. She says she was kidnapped at gunpoint and held hostage for several days before escaping. She tells police that she was lucky to get away, and that her armed kidnapper, Mark Thornton, is still in the casino.
When he turned his head for a second, she ran to a security officer and immediately begged for his help.
Reno police rush to the casino. As they close in, Thornton pulls a gun.
Put the gun down.
The officer told him to put down the gun, and there was some hesitation. And the officer repeated his demand, "You put down the gun right now, or I will fire."
Thornton placed the gun on the counter. surrendered.
After arresting Thornton, police confiscate his weapon and run a check on his SUV.
The vehicle that was being driven by Mark Thornton was Kelly O'Sullivan's vehicle. A warrant was out on that vehicle.
It's the first solid lead in the disappearance of Kelly O'Sullivan, the young mother missing from Southern California.
He admitted that he stole the vehicle.
But Thornton denies knowing anything about the missing woman. And the person he kidnapped turns out to be his ex-girlfriend, Sarah Conley.
Kelly O'Sullivan was still missing.
What seems like a promising lead doesn't pan out. Her disappearance remains a mystery.
No one had been able to discover what had happened to Kelly O'Sullivan to this point.
Finally, 2 weeks after Kelly was last seen, detectives get another break. A woman hears about the case and remembers that she saw a man driving a vehicle identical to Kelly's on the day she vanished.
What she did observe was a car and a female in the passenger seat that she believed was Kelly O'Sullivan, and they appeared to be arguing.
The witness tells police the vehicle continued along Mulholland Highway in the rugged Santa Monica Mountains northwest of Thousand Oaks. There are few roads there and even fewer houses.
Whoever took Kelly O'Sullivan would have tried to go to a place where there were not a lot of people.
Search teams narrow their focus. It's not long before they make a grim discovery.
The body was found in a ravine off of Mulholland Highway in heavy foliage and brush, not visible from any roadways.
There's a strong suspicion that these are the remains of Kelly O'Sullivan. But that only raises more questions. How did she end up here? How did she die? At least one of those questions will be answered by the medical examiner.
The body was extremely decomposed, very large amount of insect activity.
A body left in the elements can start to decompose within hours.
The upper body was mostly skeletonized all the way down to the hips.
The coroner investigator collects hair and fingernail scrapings from the body.
Our biggest fear was to lose that valuable evidence when the body was moved from the ravine and then eventually back to the coroner's office.
Investigators also hope to find some trace evidence at the scene.
We looked around the area looking for tire prints, shoe prints, any type of evidence. Unfortunately, this type of soil at this particular scene was very hard. Impressions are very hard to keep in that type of soil.
The victim's personal belongings suggest that this is indeed Kelly O'Sullivan.
Right there with her was her handbag, her identity card. She was wearing her nurse's uniform. Her personal effects and jewelry were with her.
The decedent is then wrapped in plastic and a sheet, transported from the scene.
North Mission Road, Dr. James Reeby will conduct the autopsy and confirm the victim's identity.
The dental records readily established her identity.
Any clothing is removed and placed in a rack to dry for further investigation.
The clothing was very crucial in the case.
Kelly's clothes might provide a clue to how she was shot, but their condition is making the job more difficult.
All the clothing was dark brown, the color of dark shoe leather, and thick and rather stiff from this partially dried, oily, dark brown decomp fluid.
Kelly's clothing is sent to the crime lab, while Dr. Reeby examines the body. X-rays tell a chilling tale of how she died.
Bang, bang, bang. There were 3 obvious bullets in the torso.
Dr. Reeby carefully removes the slugs.
I placed them in our bullet envelopes so that they would be available for ballistic analysis.
Ballistics expert Paul Doherty compares the slugs to bullets test-fired from the gun of suspect Mark Thornton, the young man arrested in Reno.
On one side you put the test fires, and on the other side you put your question bullet. And then you simply rotate them under these fields until you get a match.
In this case, a perfect match. Detectives now have enough evidence to bring Thornton back to California, but he stubbornly sticks to his story that he didn't kill Kelly O'Sullivan.
No, I swear to God, I don't want bullets.
He claimed that he'd simply found the car at the pet store, the keys were in it, and he took it, and he said he didn't know anything about the owner.
Investigators are convinced he's lying. Even though they don't have a motive, Thornton is charged with murder.
The most crucial piece of evidence connecting him to scene, the firearm that he had on him at the time he was arrested.
But a new revelation will send the investigation into a tailspin and force the medical examiner to put himself in the shoes of the victim. Police are investigating Mark Thornton for 2 crimes. One is the murder of Kelly O'Sullivan. The other involves the abduction of Sarah Conley.
He admitted kidnapping his former girlfriend.
But he continues to deny involvement in Kelly's murder. Detectives are convinced the 2 crimes are connected, so they focus first on the abduction of Sarah Conley.
His plan was to kidnap his girlfriend and take her up to Reno with him.
For that, he needed a car.
Get in the car! Get in the car!
Detectives believe Thornton spotted Kelly at the pet store and made his move. But they're puzzled why he forced her to go with him.
You just knew that for that entire 20 minutes drive, she was saying, take my car, take my money, you can have anything, but just let me live. It was for the sake of her 5-year-old son.
Investigators theorize Thornton ignored Kelly's pleas.
Get up! Get up!
He got her out of the car. She still had her purse on her shoulders. She didn't know that she was being marched to her death off the side of the road.
A couple living on a ranch in the area remembers hearing gunshots that day.
Thought they heard 3 shots between 3 and 6 in the afternoon on the 14th.
Oh, shut up!
He executed her because he didn't want the car to be found.
With Kelly out of the way, investigators believe Thornton drove off in her SUV. Then, according to his girlfriend, Sarah, he showed up at her condo around 10 o'clock that night.
He was waiting for her when she got off work.
Her mother had previously told him that she didn't want him around anymore.
But on that night, Sarah had no choice.
Told her to get in the car or he was the shooter, and they took off in Kelly O'Sullivan's vehicle.
Sarah told police they drove north, camping along the way, before ending up in Reno.
He's got his gun on him 24 hours a day, and so she is his hostage.
When Sarah made her daring escape, Thornton's joyride ended. He was caught with Kelly O'Sullivan's SUV and immediately became a suspect in her disappearance. Then Kelly's body was found, and Thornton became the prime suspect in her murder. At North Mission Road, Dr. Reeby continues to gather more clues about Kelly's death. But the autopsy is difficult because of the body's condition.
Decomposition in a hot climate like this sets in quite rapidly.
That decomposition is complicating Dr. Reeby's efforts to figure out when Kelly died. Some unusual clues help him find the answer.
Right after the time of death, flies will lay their eggs. Within a matter of less than 12 hours, the eggs will hatch.
The insect larvae then destroy all soft tissue in their paths.
They proceed downward through the body from the head, neck, chest, abdomen, growing as they go.
By gauging the growth of the larvae, Dr. Reeby can estimate the time of death. He can't give a precise hour, but he can say which day.
The findings of decomposition were consistent with a 12-day interval of death. She was killed right after the last time she was known to be alive.
September 14th, when Kelly was last known to be alive at the pet shop, which is exactly where Mark Thornton admits he stole her car. Detectives seem to have their man until he makes a stunning claim.
He said it was an accident.
She was pulling on the barrel of the gun.
Thornton says he didn't mean to kill her at all, that Kelly grabbed for the gun. They struggled, and it went off.
If it was truly an accident, why did 3 bullets wind up in her?
A good question. And it would take ingenious thinking by the medical examiner to prove the shots were not fired during a struggle. Investigators don't have any solid evidence proving that Mark Thornton deliberately shot Kelly O'Sullivan 3 times. Her body was found so decomposed, it was hard to determine the trajectory of the bullets. But there are bullet holes in Kelly's blouse. Investigators have a novel idea.
They took that clothing, which was all greasy and stiffened and blackened and oily, and they laundered it.
You just simply soak the material. You don't rub it. And ultimately, most of those products of decomposition are gone.
Dr. Reby carefully examines the blouse and makes a crucial discovery. He can reconstruct the bullet's path using the location of the holes. A bullet hole in the blouse can be used as reference point A. Where Dr. Reby found the slug in the body is point B. Connecting the two gives him the trajectory of the bullet.
The one on the front V-neck had a blood stain, clearly visible.
He then takes a close look at the other two holes.
I correlated those with the two bullets in the abdomen as indicating she had been shot in the back.
All three shots took a sharply downward path through the body, leading Dr. Reby to conclude the killer had to be standing above Kelly when he fired the gun. A visit to the crime scene could help Dr. Reby confirm the unusual trajectory of the bullets.
Police showed me the actual spot where the body had been found. Kelly had probably been forced to back into that area as she crouched inside that little cavern or grotto of bushes.
He shot her once in the chest area, and that caused her to slump forward.
Finished off with 2 shots to the back.
Dr. Reby tells jurors where he thinks Thornton stood in relation to Kelly, a conclusion further supported by one final piece of evidence. Her blouse showed no signs of powder burns.
There was no indication the gun had been placed in contact with her chest.
The forensics proved conclusively there was never any struggle for the weapon.
He shot her from a distance.
This was no accident. It was an execution-style murder.
Coup de grace. It indicated the intent for him to kill her.
He was convicted of first-degree murder with special circumstances.
During the sentencing, Kelly O'Sullivan's young son testified. And today, Mark Thornton sits on death row at San Quentin State Prison. One more story from the files of the Los Angeles County Coroner.